Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Thiravanachari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Thiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Thiravanachari Yamuna Thiravanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhav Radha Madhav Jaya Radha Madhav Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaur Hari Bo Nitai Gaur Hari Bo Jai Shri Radha Madhava ki Jai Shri Gauranitai Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militum Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapandantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalan Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sadvajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Dishatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Kruti Vachalam Pangam Langai Tigarim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Namashrestam Manamapi Sachiputra Atra Swarupam Rupam Tashagrajam Uruparimatrim Goshtavatim Radhakundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasha Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natoshmi. Hare Krishna. So today we are looking at a new chapter. We're moving on to the birth of Emperor Parikshit. And this, of course, is a vital chapter in the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, because without Maharaj Parikshit's interaction with the Supreme Person of Godhead in the womb, and then obviously his then being cursed, by the young Brahmin boy, we wouldn't, in one sense, have the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was obviously the catalyst for the whole thing coming together. So we'll start off here with text 1, and we'll read through the Sanskrit, the word for word, and so on and so forth. Shaunaka uvacha, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shaunaka uvacha. Ashvatam no Pashvastena. Brahma Shishnoru Tejasa. Uttaraya Hato Garba. Ishna Jivata Punaha. Shaunaka uvacha. The sage Shaunaka said, Ashvatamna, of Ashvatamna, the son of Drona, Upashristena, by release of Brahma Shirshna, the invincible weapon, Brahmastra, Urutejasa, by high temperature, Uttarayaha, of Uttara, mother of Parikshit, Hataha, being spoiled, Garbaha, the womb, Ishena, by the Supreme Lord, Ajivataha, brought to life, Punaha, again. Translation and purport by Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. The sage Shaunaka said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama, but Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. Purport. The sages assembled in the forest of Naimisharanya inquired from Sutta Goswami about the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, but in the course of the narration of other topics, like the release of the Brahmastra by the son of Drona, his punishment by Arjuna, Queen Kuntidev's prayers, the Pandavas' visit to the place where Bhishmadev was lying, his prayers and thereafter the Lord's departure for Dwarka were discussed. His arrival at Dwarka and residing with the 16,000 queens, etc., were narrated. The sages were absorbed in hearing about such descriptions, but now they wanted to turn to the original topic, and thus the inquiry was made by Shaunaka Rishi. So the subject of the release of the Brahmastra weapon by Ashwatthama is renewed. Verse number 2. Tasya janma mahabudhi karmani cha mahatmanaha nithanam cha yataiva sit sapretya gatavan yataha. Tasya, his, of Maharaj Parikshit, janma, birth, mahabudhihi, of great intelligence, karmani, activities, cha, also, maha atmanaha, of the great devotee, nidhanam, demise, cha, also, yata, as it was, eva, of course, asit, happened, saha, he, pratya, destination after death, gatavan, achieved, yata, as it were. Translation. How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place, and what did he achieve after his death? Purport. The king of Hastinapur, now Delhi, used to be the emperor of the world, at least till the time of the son of Emperor Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Lord in the womb of his mother, so he could certainly be saved from an untimely death due to the ill will of the son of a Brahmana. Because the age of Kali began to act just after the assumption of power by Maharaj Parikshit, the first sign of misgivings was exhibited in the cursing of such a greatly intelligent and devoted king as Maharaj Parikshit. The king is the protector of the helpless citizens, and their welfare, peace, and prosperity depend on him. Unfortunately, by the instigation of the fallen age of Kali, an unfortunate Brahmin's son was employed to condemn the innocent Maharaj Parikshit, and so the king had to prepare himself for death within 7 days. Maharaj Parikshit is especially famous as one who is protected by Vishnu, and when he was unduly cursed by a Brahmana's son, he could have invoked the mercy of the Lord to save him, but he did not want to because he was a pure devotee. A pure devotee never asks the Lord for any undue favor. Maharaj Parikshit knew that the curse of the Brahmana's son upon him was unjustified, as everyone else knew, but he did not want to counteract it because he knew also that the age of Kali had begun that the first symptom of the age, namely degradation of the highly talented Brahmana community, had also begun. He did not want to interfere with the current of time, but he prepared himself to meet death very cheerfully and very properly. Being fortunate, he got at least 7 days to prepare himself to meet death, and so he properly utilized the time in the association of Shukadev Goswami, the great saint and devotee of the Lord. And then lastly, verse number 3, Tadidam Shrutam Ichamo Gaditum Yadimanyase Bruhi Na Shadadananam Yashya Gyanam Adachchukaha. Word for word, Tat, all, Idam, this, Shrutum, to hear, Ichamaha, all willing, Gaditum, to narrate, Yati, if, Manyase, you think, Bruhi, please speak, Naha, we, Shadadananam, who are very much respectful, Yasya, whose, Gyanam, transcendental knowledge, Adat, delivered, Sukaha, Sri Sukadev Goswami. Translation, we all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Sukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. Purport, Sukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge to Maharaj Parikshit during the remaining 7 days of his life, and Maharaj Parikshit heard him properly, just like an ardent student. The effect of such a bona fide hearing and chanting of Srimad Bhagavatam was equally shared by both the hearer and the chanter. Both of them were benefited. Out of the 9 different transcendental means of devotional service to the Lord prescribed in the Bhagavatam, either all of them or some of them, or even one of them are equally beneficial if properly discharged. Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadev Goswami were serious performers of the first 2 important items, namely the process of chanting and the process of hearing, and therefore both of them were successful in their laudable attempt. Transcendental realization is attained by such serious hearing and chanting, and not otherwise. There is a type of spiritual master and disciple much advertised in this age of Kali. It is said that the master injects spiritual force into the disciple by an electrical current generated by the master, and the disciple begins to feel the shock. He becomes unconscious, and the master weeps for his exhausting his store of so-called spiritual assets. Such bogus advertisement is going on in this age, and the poor common man is becoming the victim of such advertisement. We do not find such folk tales in the dealings of Shukadev Goswami and his great disciple, Maharaj Parikshit. The sage recited Srimad Bhagavatam in devotion, and the great king heard him properly. The king did not feel any shock of electrical current from the master, nor did he become unconscious while receiving knowledge from the master. One should not therefore become a victim of these unauthorized advertisements made by some bogus representative of Vedic knowledge. The sages of Naimisharanya were very respectful in hearing about Maharaj Parikshit because of his receiving knowledge from Shukadev Goswami by means of ardent hearing. Ardent hearing from the bona fide master is the only way to receive transcendental knowledge, and there is no need for medical performances or occult mysticism for miraculous effects. The process is simple, but only the sincere party can achieve the desired result. Okay, so we'll jump back to the first sloka here. So again, the sage Sonika said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvatthama, but Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. So if you remember back to this story, we hear that Ashvatthama was, although the son of a Brahmin, he was actually, he had a very treacherous mentality. They say that, just as, Kamsa was capable of killing the sons, of his own sister and brother-in-law, it shows, Prabhupada mentions in that purport, in the Krishna book, he says that these demons are capable of doing anything. They can do any act without thinking, So Ashvatthama, although apparently well-trained, by his father and so on and so forth, and by all his, all the other surrounding princes and warriors that were his friends and associates, nonetheless, he had fallen into, bad mentality, bad behavior, and he was capable of doing things that were abominable. Even Duryodhan was really disgusted that he crept, in the middle of the night, and decapitated the sons of the Pandavas, So, even the enemy, they were greatly disturbed at the act that he had done, And yet, of course, the great souls, the Pandavas, they forgive him, Arjuna, Bhima, they wanted just to kill him. And Krishna at one point said, yeah, just kill him. And then they said, oh, well, maybe you should just embarrass him. You should send him off, chop all his hair off, he had this special jewel that gave him his potency, take that off and leave him essentially broken, dead, but not dead in that sense. But then he came back for one final blow. He wanted to get his last bit of revenge, a back shot, you could say. He wanted to do some last sneaky back shot on the way out, So he fired a Brahmastra weapon, which is a nuclear arrow. Back in this Vedic times, they were capable of technologies far beyond what we can imagine now. They talk about counteracting these different weapons with mantras, with Brahminical potency. Nothing was ever done whimsically. You had to stand there. You had to know the mantras. You had to first purify yourself. With like Achaman and this kind of thing. Like when Arjuna fired a counter arrow, the first time round that Ashwatthama fired a Brahmastra at Arjuna, he didn't know how to counteract it. So Arjuna had to go, stand next to a sacred river, pray, then fire his, then do the mantras to disentangle, so these are things that are beyond, the modern conception. Nowadays, the nuclear capacity is just to push a button, but they don't also know how to withdraw it. So, there's incredible damage can be done from these things. So luckily, we have this Srimad Bhagavatam, and we have the Krishna conscious philosophy, which is holding back the potential of these demons to destroy the planet, actually, Of course, Srila Prabhupada in many discussions and conversations stated that they couldn't simply just destroy the planet in that sense, because that's not that's not the future of the human society. We naturally have 10,000 years window of opportunity to be Krishna conscious, and that's not going to be taken away from us by any actions of these demons in the material world that we have now, these politicians and so on and so forth, corrupted government officials, or dictators, or so on and so forth, So Ashwatthama, he fired another Brahmastra at the mother of Parikshit Maharaj, Uttara. He was obviously the future king. So he figured, well, I was unable to kill the Pandavas, so I'll fire off an arrow and kill the next descendant, in the line. But he was unsuccessful, because Krishna, of course, being all-knowing, he wanted to protect Maharaj Parikshit, and he surrounded the womb of Uttara with his Sudarshan chakra, and he stood there and protected the baby in the womb. So from his very conception, and his very day, like the proper day one, he's in the womb, he's a little baby in the womb, and there he's getting to see Krishna straight away. And he prayed to the Lord, and he got to take darshan of the Lord, So already from that stage he was able, and of course when he was born, he had remembered that he had the potency of being able to remember that he saw the Lord in the heart. And throughout his whole entire life, Maharaj Parikshit was into, Krishna consciousness. They even state somewhere that he was, he used to play with dolls, just like our kids in devotional life. They'll play with these like Jagannath dolls, or Radha Krishna, Krishna Balaram, whatever it is, they'll play with these dolls, and they'll reenact the pastimes of Krishna. Of course, especially his mother was one of the last people to see Krishna, So we hear, of course, that the deities in Vrindavan were made under her guidance, So she was telling them how the deities could be made, So Maharaj Parikshit got a lot of knowledge of the pastimes of Krishna in that sense. So this is why it says in the next purport that he was a famous devotee for being protected by the Lord, And then the next shloka goes on to say, how was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place? And what did he achieve after his death? So why is it, we can think that, and Prabhupada mentions this here, why did he not counteract his curse? This young boy, Shringi, the Brahmin's son, he of course was angry at seeing his father decorated by the snake, and even Maharaj Pariksit himself, has being thirsty, being disturbed by his mind. These things are just they're setting the example to us. They're just they're showing what is capable and what is possible in Kali Yuga, that we are victims of our senses. Maharaj Pariksit is a pure devotee. He fasted for 7 days and 7 nights without water, without food, fully absorbed in hearing, Krishna Katha. And yet, for some reason, he was going through the forest, just hunting. He was practicing his bowmanship and his hunting skills, which is what a Kshatriya is allowed to do because of their nature. Also protecting the citizens from wild animals like tigers and lions and so on and so forth. He was doing that, and he became thirsty. He became hungry when he saw that the sage was meditating and didn't look up to honor the king's presence. He became disturbed. He became angry. But this is not possible for a pure devotee. So naturally, Krishna is again setting the pastime, setting the foundation for the Srimad Bhagavatam to take place. He's laying the Leela out ahead. Of course, because the Pandavas were on their way out, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead had already left by this time, then the age of Kali had came in. It was coming in. So the personification, Kali himself, he had already slipped back into the material world. So this was another example of, this is his influence in play in that sense. There's a very wonderful book. Many of you must have seen it over the years. It's called the Srimad Bhagavatam Stories. It's a children's book, maybe from, I don't know, from 5-year-olds upwards to maybe teenage age. And it has lovely pictures and descriptions of these Bhagavatam pastimes, especially this one about Maharaj Pariksit in the womb and so on and so forth. And it kind of shows just at this point when Shringi is saying, okay, I'm going to take my Brahmin thread, I'm going to curse the king and so on and so forth. You can just, on the corner of the page, you can just see, that Kali's looking and he's like, I've got it. I've found my way back in. I found my way to corrupt the Brahminical order, and I found my way to slip in to the age of Kali in full, So Maharaj Pariksit knew that this innocent young Brahmin was just disturbed by his lack of training and qualification and so on and so forth. And he, being a pure devotee, he could easily, with that potency, he could easily have counteracted. But he didn't, because as we hear, Prabhupada says that he knew that the age of Kali had fully set. He knew that the Brahmin community had become fallen. They no longer have the potency to do big yagya, to do elaborate deity worship as they did in the previous stages, So he wanted to also, then hand over, the kingship to his own son, which was Maharaj Janamejaya, who we hear about a little bit later after Maharaj Pariksit passed away. And we hear also as well that, for example, about kings, that were cursed and actually just accepted the curse. When we're talking here in the next shloka about the 9 processes of devotional service, a very famous king, a very famous Maharaj, who was the embodiment of all 9 processes. Prabhupada said you can perfect any one of them, and you can go back to Godhead. You can achieve pure devotional service in any one of them. But the famous Maharaj Ambarish, he was, there's one shloka where it's saying every day, he bowed down, every day he chanted, every day he read, every day he went to the pilgrimage places, every day he followed all the 9 processes of devotional service expertly. But again, he also, kind of was put into difficulty and accepted it. He had no, no difficulty in saying, okay, this is what's happening to me. I'm being attacked by this big demon, but no problem. I'll just accept that that's going on. And of course, then this Durvasa Muni had to, go off and surrender to, Ambarish Maharaj. And then we also hear other pastimes. The name's escaping me now, but I'm trying to think of the pastime where one of the kings, I think it was, this Chitraketu, he was also a pure devotee, but he was following devotional service nicely and this kind of thing. But he made the mistake of, when he was going around in one of his airplanes, he saw, Shiva and Parvati. She was sitting on his lap, when they were giving class. Lord Shiva was sitting giving class to all the sages, and Parvati sitting on his lap. And he kind of thought, oh, that's quite funny. That seems quite an unusual thing to do. You don't see that in the Bhagavatam class, but, and she cursed him. And he thought, okay, I could counteract this because it's an unfair curse, But he said, okay, no problem, I'll accept. And of course, then that sent him down into the material world, and he took the form as a demon, this Vritrasura. So again, we can see that there's many kings and many pure devotees, they just accept it because it'll put in place something else, and they know that the Lord's will is there. So they're thinking, okay, no problem, I'll just go with it, for the greater benefit of the conditioned souls, So then Maharaj Parikshit was then obviously cursed, and he was going to die. And then, being such a great soul, he automatically said, right, let me go and prepare myself. And how do you prepare yourself for death? What is the way to do it? You hear, the pastimes of Krishna from a pure devotee. You can, of course, just go to anybody. We have you have many professional speakers who know the philosophy. Prabhupada's talking about here in the third shloka. It says here, we all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Shukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. So Prabhupada made a very clear point about these fallen gurus. And there's many of them, even to this day, that are just giving initiation, just for a few rupees, or a few pounds or whatever. If they come over to the West, they're giving diksha for whatever it is, £100 or £1,000, and people are giving that, and they're coming away with a special mantra or a secret mantra or a name. They get a devotional name, but because there's no potency there, they'll take a second initiation, a third initiation, and so on and so forth. And many even of our senior devotees, and many of our devotees in general have heard or came across these gurus. Even one of our swamis, who's no longer in the movement now, he passed away. Well, he was, if you know what I mean, he is in the movement, but he's passed away. So he's no longer alive. He never left in that sense. But he talked about his taking initiation from Srila Prabhupada. But before that, he had also, in those early days of the early 60s and 70s, he had met a lot of these different gurus. And, he just took initiation from one, and then he took initiation from another. And they kept, because they were just giving him mantras and telling him to go off and do this and give money. And he wasn't feeling anything from it until one day he met Srila Prabhupada. And then, on coming back to the guru that had given him his initiation, the guru actually, at least this guru, had nice proper sense and proper attitude to say, why you come back to me? Srila Prabhupada is the Jagat Guru. Srila Prabhupada is the guru of the whole universe. You go back to him, never come back to me again. So luckily he then understood that he was rightly situated in ISKCON and rightly situated under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada. But there's many of these things, Prabhupada used to talk about I think he used to say that, I can't remember how much monetary value he used to say, but the idea of getting like a Brahmin thread for a few paisa, in the local shop, you could just pick up some Brahmin thread, put it on, pretend to, mimic the idea of chanting some mantras, but without any potency. These things are, without coming through the proper Guru Parampara, without coming through, from this bona fide lineage, there's nothing there in that sense, So Maharaj Parikshit, he had to hear from a pure devotee but also hear from someone who came in the lineage. Obviously, Shukadev Goswami, we know from also hearing his pastimes, how he was born and so on and so forth. He is the son of Vyasadev. And Vyasadev is the actual compiler, the writer, and he's the guru of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. He obviously heard it from his spiritual master, Narada Muni. So again, he's in the parampara system, and then he gave it to his son. He passed it on to his son. So this is pure, unbroken knowledge, So then Shukadev Goswami was the qualified speaker to come and then sit and speak to Maharaj Parikshit. And the first question that he asks, is the highest question. He says, what should a person do when he's about to approach death? Because if, and I say if, we're materially absorbed, then the greatest disturbance to our plans is death. Because whether or not we accept that there is a God or not, we cannot defeat that one point, that death is close, at all times. And it's very nice. And of course, this point has been made many, many times. I'm not saying anything new or far out here, but, Prabhupada mentions Parikshit Maharaj got 7 days. He guaranteed 7 days, but we don't know if we have 7 days. So Krishna consciousness, we have to take really, really seriously, And one other thing I was going to mention about these kings, actually, Prabhupada, he says in the purport that these lineages of kings, they're all devotees of the Lord. We see actually in the 9th canto, both the dynasty of the moon and the sun are both given. Between 8th canto and 9th canto, you start hearing a lot of these. His son was such and such. He had 8 sons. He had 10 sons. And you would think, why lists and lists and lists of sons? Because and it's mentioned that in the end of one of the chapters, I can't remember which one, but it says all these kings were realized devotees. So at that time, all these kings were living purely. They were living pure Krishna conscious lives, and their citizens, they came to them for help, for everything. The citizens and the king, the soldiers, it was a proper unit. We talk about, of course, trying to reestablish Varnashram Dharma, where all the 4 ashramas and the 4 Varnas are all established properly. Everybody's in their right place according to their nature, And it's not one of these things like when you, if you want to learn Ayurveda, for example, and a lot of people find it difficult because they start trying to study their dosha, and they're thinking, it says if your skin type is this, whether it's thick or thin, or your hair is a certain color, or your eyes are this thing, or if you sleep too much, or if you start thinking, well, am I this one or that one? Am I that or this? Maybe I'm a little bit of that. You start getting confused. But, we can kind of tell, especially in those times, because everybody was a bit more pure and a bit more focused and concentrated. It was very clear what Varna you were in, what ashrama you were in. It was very clear, in that sense. And today, in today's time, especially with the wonderful ISKCON movement and the preaching that we do, we can also give that opportunity to people to become very clear and where their nature needs to be situated in that sense. And again, this taking a pure spiritual master, surrendering to that guru, giving him submissive service, then he can tell you, this is your nature, this is where you should be placed, this is how you should act. And in that way, you'll be happy, you'll be content, and you'll advance properly without any obstacles, without any blockages. The reason we get caught up in stuff is because the mind's not satisfied correctly, and not just because of lack of Krishna consciousness. That's one thing, obviously, that's the main thing. It is definitely, we sometimes use the throw around statement of it's all in the bead bag, there's more coming out of the bead bag than your finger. And these are just jokes, but nonetheless, it is the highest thing. The Yuga Dharma is the chanting of the holy name, the Sankirtan Yuga Dharma, Kalir Dosha Nidera Jan, Ashya Kumahaguna, Kirtana Deva Krishna Shya, Mukta Sangha Paramvrajit. We've just said that Kali Yuga has come in, and Kali Yuga is full of darkness, full of difficulty. It's a horrible age, and the shloka before that one is saying that in the other ages, The Brahmins had the potency. They could do huge, massive yajna. These Ashwamedha yajnas could go on for not just for days, but years. They could do 100 of these festivals, and all the Brahmins were there. They could all do the mantras perfectly. If there was one mistake, the whole thing was gone. Start again, done. But they wouldn't make that mistake because they had that. That was the ability of that time. Now we can't do that. Now we chant the holy name, not because the holy name is lesser than everything else, but because the holy name is the most potent, the most cutting to our difficulties, most cutting through our karmas, through our conditionings, through our desires, through our sinful reactions. So it just slices it all away like one of these, razor sharp, Japanese knives or whatever, these ones that you see, that just completely slices and dices everything, gone, finished. In this age, the darkest age, we need the most powerful light, which is the holy name. But nonetheless, that being said, if you understand where you're situated correctly, that also helps. Yeah. The higher you want to go in devotional service, the deeper the foundation needs to be. So build all the other things as well. Have good association, eat proper foods at the right time, rise early, take shower, take bath, be in good consciousness, be careful of your, be careful what you speak, who you speak to, when you speak, all these things. Situate yourself nicely, and then your devotional practices will flow. They'll all flow together as organically, and that everything will gel together nicely. But yeah, so these kings, they were all pure devotees. They were all devotees of the Lord. And their lineages were all devotees. Here we see the Pandavas were the great friends of Krishna. Arjuna was driving Krishna's chariot. So his nephew Parikshit Maharaj is naturally going to be a devotee. Which is why, of course, we see that the Lord stepped in, to save him. And so, which is also why, of course, he was able to receptively sit and hear the Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days and 7 nights. And the saying here, of course, Shukadev Goswami was also he perfected himself in in spreading Krishna consciousness. And Shravanam, he was speaking the process, chanting the glories of the Lord. And then Parikshit Maharaj, he's the embodiment of hearing, because again, as we can clearly see, he was so eager. So many times, he cuts the flow of each chapter as the Bhagavatam's going on. He says, okay, you've told me that, now keep going, tell me more, and he'll jump in, he'll ask a question. Okay, why is this? You just told me this. Now I want to hear. He was so enthusiastic. He was just bursting, I need to tell me more. You'd think that maybe after 2 days of fasting, he'd be like, I'm kind of struggling there. Maybe we can, we can stop or something. And he's like, no, tell me more. I've heard all these things about especially this 10th, when we get to the 10th canto, he's heard all the things about the universe and, all these really complex tattva and so on and so forth. But he's like, now tell me about Krishna. Now I want to hear about, he just wants to hear more and more and more, which is what we're looking for. All these things are examples to us. So I'll try and summarize quickly, and I'll just take some questions. If there is any questions or corrections, anybody wants to add anything in. We have to jump, into this parampara system and take a bona fide spiritual master. Don't get caught up by the flashy show of devotion that goes on outside of Krishna consciousness. There is many other religions, there's many other processes, and they have their purpose. Yeah, we certainly don't say that that they're not bona fide in that sense, but they are of a lower nature. They're a lower spiritual nature than this bhakti process, which is the original and topmost knowledge. And certainly, this bogus advertisement, as Prabhupada put it, it's still going on, but we've come now to the highest process, the fast track Krishna consciousness process. So sometimes it gets difficult. Sometimes, Srila Prabhupada, he says at the end, he says the process is simple, but only the sincere party. So this is where the sincerity kicks in. Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is simple, but it's not easy. Yeah, and we know that many of your mentors and your gurus and your senior devotees around you, they'll tell you that when you're having a tough day, you can't get your rounds done, your mind is flipped out, maybe the kids are making it difficult for you, your job, whatever it is to get things done, you can't get any reading done or whatever, or you have no taste. Maybe you have no taste for, some people like to read, some people like to listen, some people like to, whatever it is, whatever different things we like. But if we're having that tough time in our spiritual life, which does happen, and it will happen, just be sincere and keep going, so I mean, sometimes there's, like they say, that there's three kind of levels of when you're in a relationship with someone, there's three levels of connection that's there, and two of them kind of fade off, eventually, because it's the nature of the material world. So the first one is the love, right? Generally speaking, when you get married, there's all the lovey-dovey and there's all the thing, but that eventually fades. Even in devotional life, even though that you're working together as devotees, it's kind of eventually fades off, and that's okay, that's fine. And then eventually there's the second level is friendship. You become friends together and you serve together, and that's what keeps you going. But if that ever does drop also, which again can happen, the third and final unbreakable bond is the commitment. So in Krishna consciousness, we have that same thing. You come in and everything's great. All the devotees are fantastic. This process, all this knowledge is bliss. Oh my God, the kirtan, jumping, dancing. But if you lose that love a little bit, no problem. Go deep with your friends. Go deep with all the devotees around you, and really find a person, of course, that you feel confident you can actually, confide in properly, and so on and so forth. And then, not just your guru, but also some Siksha gurus around you that you can speak to nicely, and then, ask them. But if it ever was that also the friendship failed you somehow, remember the commitment to your own self and to Krishna, that we never turn our back on the Supreme Person of Godhead, because he hasn't turned his back on us. There's this, on a parting note, there's this shloka, Upadrastamana Mantacha, Bharta Bhakta Maheshwarai. So he's saying that I am that witness in your heart, as the super soul. I've been watching you. I've been what do you say, overseeing and permitting throughout your whole journey, through all these births after births after births. But I'll stop there, Prabhu, and devotees, and please, if anybody wants to ask anything or add anything in. Hare Krishna. Sorry, I think I cut it quite close as well.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your wonderful explanations. I request all the devotees to come forward and ask questions.
Prabhu, if I may. This is Raji.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, thank you for your wonderful class this morning. The last bit, I think I probably missed it. When you said that there are three layers to any relationship, the first one was the love towards God, and the second one is be with your friends, so that you continue to do the, the spiritual activities. What was the third bit? Sorry, I think I had a connection problem. I missed it. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, the third one is your commitment, because obviously you've taken vows of marriage. You've taken vows to look after that person, throughout the rest of their life. Especially like in Vedic marriage, you do the seven circle. You're saying that not only just in this lifetime, but into many lifetimes, I'm taking on, your association. You're taking on all my stuff. I'm taking on all yours. And that's a commitment. You've committed that you're going to look after the kids, and you never break that. No matter whether you get mental, whether they get mental, whether this goes wrong, that goes wrong, you commit. And it's the same in Krishna consciousness. When we see that there is something higher spiritually, there is something that is giving us deep satisfaction, even if you have philosophical doubt or there's some material circumstances, that commitment is being made, especially when there's vows of initiation, that example is also, I was saying, is also there in Krishna consciousness, those three steps, that if the first two fail, the commitment has been made, which is unbreakable in that sense. There's kind of like a joke that we make in Krishna consciousness, but it's a very serious point, that if you wake up the next day, all the devotees, it's usually, we say this in the ashram, but nonetheless, if you come to, if you're all in ISKCON Leicester here that's listening, if you come on the Sunday program, you show up at the Avanti Fields and no one's there. Oh, okay. Is it time for I thought it was, 3:30 is the program. All the devotees are gone. They're all left, Prabhu. No one's in ISKCON Leicester. Okay, no problem. I'll just go home and chant my rounds. You know, all the ashram devotees are gone, the temples, and everybody's left. You wake up in the morning, they're all gone. Okay, no problem. I'll just chant my rounds in front of Tulsi. I'll sing Guru Puja to the deities. I'll open the curtain, because we made that commitment. If everybody else is gone, it doesn't matter, but Krishna consciousness continues.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class. The wonderful points you put forward. It's really, really good to hear all the points you made. Just got a question about demons. Like you were mentioning this. With regards to demons that we hear about from Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and in the context of this material world in present times, is how do we consider those that are not in the scope of Krishna consciousness? Are they considered to be demon? Are they considered to be demons? Those that are not within the scope of Krishna consciousness, and how do we process that?
Well, the devotee, very good question. Yeah, I mean, you could say that, of course, one thing to take into account is that demons means inimical. Yeah, demons are against Krishna. The demigods are the servants of Krishna, and the demons are, they know Krishna's there. They know, you hear that Hiranyakashipu was speaking so much Vedic philosophy. Kamsa was also speaking so much philosophy. He was discussing with Vasudev, so they know the philosophy, but they've chosen to be against, even though he says, Vishnu is going to end up killing me anyway, but I'm going to try like anything to kill him with sending all these Putana and Aristashura. And so that's demoniac mentality. But the demoniac mentality in the material world and in the modern, in this age now, is comes in the form of, material desires, lust, anger, greed, envy, So we don't say that the living entities are demons, because they're not inimical to Krishna. They're just in ignorance in that sense. They have no concept because they've forgotten their original position of being the servant of Krishna. So the devotees, our stance is, this Patita Pavana, savior of the most fallen. We want to help the conditioned souls by, giving them Prabhupada's books, by doing, Harinam, to purify their consciousness. We want to have that mercy mentality on them. Especially if we can remember back when we didn't have that Krishna consciousness, and we can think, I know what it feels like to be them, to be lost, So yeah, they're not demons, they're just misguided in that sense. But of course there is people in society that have what you probably could describe as being very demoniac qualities in that sense, and there has been big demons that have done atrocities, over the years, that you could kind of hold in the level of, these these Vedic times in that sense. But the general person, no, we want to help them be Krishna conscious. They're not demoniac. They've just slipped away a little bit, for some time. Is that
Thank you.
okay? Or?
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. That's really nice. Nice to understand. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think we've lost our host, so I guess we can stop there. Is there anything else, or is that us?
Well, that's wonderful, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful class today.
No,
So it was really nice hearing you today, and we hope to hear from you more on Srimad Bhagavatam. So thank you very much, Prabhu. So,
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bom.
Janardan Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thank you
Hare
very
Krishna.
much. Thanks for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna.